even though he submits perfectly to the will of the Father, that does not mean that the Father is more God than him.
God cares about the posture of our hearts when we do apologetics, but he also cares about how we treat people when we do apologetics.
Have you mistaken being woke with hatred?
So this is my conversation
with
with Trayvon.
Right here. Trayvon is part of the Human Rights Campaign. Can you explain what the Human Rights Campaign is?
The Human Rights Campaign is basically a nonprofit organization. We like to call ourselves a LGBT civil rights group, where we go around and we basically do activism. Hi, Javon. Where we do activism.
I remember this day; it was gloomy.
Where we canvas around Atlanta and canvas to get people to get involved with the LGBT politics and rights. It's very important because we live in a society today where our current administration is setting a very, very scary tone. So we have to try to make sure that us as canvassers, we push that Equality Act bill that we're trying to federally pass to make the public aware of the awareness of what's going on, because we feel that everyone should have equal rights. So yeah, and then I'm a creative director, a fashion stylist, a visual artist, and I'm originally a gentrification and social and political activist here now.
He does a lot.
His friend just walked up.
What's your name?
I was very nervous in this conversation with Trayvon.
Why? Why did you feel nervous?
I think one of the reasons why I felt nervous, this is one of our first street conversations, if you could remember, Kim. So we were out in this community trying to just reach people, and Trayvon was one of the first people who was willing to talk to us. But I think as soon as I found out that he was a gay man working with the Human Rights Campaign, I immediately got nervous because, you know, in the urban context, like black heterosexual men have not always treated gay men, gay black men in their communities with dignity and respect and honor. And so I was just really nervous about coming off maybe homophobic, or maybe, you know, like I didn't like him. But I also saw his nervousness as I began to talk to him, you know, because he was a sweet dude. Like, he was really kind and really gentle in a lot of ways. And so, and you can attest to this, Kim, that he was just automatically likable. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk to him. I really wanted to understand the Human Rights Campaign and why he does what he does. But then when I started to realize that he, you know, practiced Buddhism and worshipped his ancestors in some ways, and just didn't have a real great idea of who the God of the universe was, I wanted to challenge a lot of his views, not just homosexuality. And so I just didn't want to make that the focus, the main thing, his sexuality, because I know so many people in his life probably has made his sexuality like who he was, and, you know, who he is. And so I wanted to just, approach him differently, and I wanted to just be extra cautious. And so I think that's a lot of the battle when you're engaging with people, is really wrestling. And I know now that wrestle is good, right? I thank God that I had that wrestle. I thank God that I just don't go into conversations with someone wanting to just have a conversation and that's it. But I'm really thinking about the person. I think that it helps us to not walk on eggshells, but it helps us to treat people with gentleness. And so I was just praying, you know, watching his behavior, and asking God for wisdom on how to treat Trayvon. And I think the conversation went well.
I think, like, I think about it like, man, God was really gracious to give us someone that was just so responsive and kind.
And honest.
And honest in, like, our first conversation, which is just a beautiful testament, I think, to the spirit of the channel.
Absolutely. I think that him being the first Bo TV conversation was a blessing, and we've seen him, you know, in the same community over, and every time we see each other, we're cool, we hug, and he updates us about, you know, his fashion endeavors, and so he's no longer with the organization anymore, but he still loves fashion. So yeah, this is the part of the episode that a lot of people talked about the most. Some of the questions that I, you know, raised to Trayvon, and so we played one of the questions, and then we talk about it afterwards.
Believe that man creates his own standard.
And when man creates his own standard, we have no right to argue against that standard.
Yeah. And more so, I feel like we should respect everybody's standard, whoever created it. So in a sense, like I said, that I don't judge anybody for what their religion is, because I believe that in all religion, it all equals up to one answer.
So my question to you is, I was trying to get to a point. So if you are, if on one hand that you're a gay right activist, and on the other hand you believe that, you know, all men are their own God who create their own standard, how are you able to then argue against the person who disagrees with homosexuality when his standard that homosexuality is wrong goes against your standard? Like when do you start to define who's wrong and who's not, when you just said that everybody is their own God? Like why is the guy who disagrees with homosexuality wrong for disagreeing with you when he is his own God who has his own standard that you can't argue against?
That's a really good question. Trying to see how I would answer this. Because, in a sense, well, nothing is a wrong or right answer. I just want to be very clear with that.
Yeah, I think this is the part where he's like really thinking about that logic.
That's like one of the reasons why I never really argue with people, rather if they feel that homosexuality is wrong.
But that's the thing. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
When I have a thought,
But I cut him off.
Before I get it.
when I say argue, I don't mean like
No. I
going
know,
back
like
and
physically argue, but like having a discussion.
But when you out here with the human rights campaign jacket on or whatever, what you're essentially doing is presenting an argument. You're presenting a case for why it's wrong for people to come against those who are in the LGBTQ community.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
You're presenting the argument. So my question is how is that argument able to be presented when you just said every man is their own God, and we have no right to tell a person who's wrong? Like, what's wrong with him, with his worldview disagreeing with your worldview when he's his own God and you're your own God?
I never thought of this answer. I guess it's just the belief that I have in, and just saying, I guess the way to view it, in a sense, because I'm trying to get it out in a different word, because my partner would be the person to really clarify this more than I am. I don't know how to answer that question.
Got it.
So this part right here, I think a lot of people like this part because it seemed as if I like stumped him in an argument or conversation, and I'm really glad that I'm doing this video because I want to express that wasn't my aim and that wasn't my goal. The reason why I ask questions the way I do is because I think oftentimes when we are talking to somebody who believes differently than us, we can tell them what's right or tell them what's wrong, and it's not conversational. But I think oftentimes in the scriptures, when we see Jesus walking up to someone or talking to someone, he often engages people who might be in error with questions. You know, the woman at the well, like, where's your husband? Like, he knew she had 5, right? And so these questions help reveal what's in a person's heart without you seeming like you're just attacking them. And so I think one of the reasons why I was asking Trayvon these questions and trying to clarify these questions was for him to see the contradiction in his own worldview without me saying, you're contradicting yourself, you know? And I think it just helps the conversation not be argumentative. And so if the person doesn't have an answer, it's good. You know, I don't think that we should, you know, glory in the fact that, Preston left him speechless. But I think that we should, you know, be grateful over the fact that he's thinking about something that he's never thought about before, which can help him in the future. And so that's one of the reasons why I was just asking him questions. Not to seem smarter, but for him to think about things from a different angle.
And just to add, like, the humility in that
Yes.
as well. To,
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
respect, you know, the person's humility.
That's really
to say
good.
that.
That's really good, Kim, because I think Trayvon, he displayed way more humility than a lot of people that we talk to. And so when I asked him the question and he didn't really have an answer for it, I was very careful not to be like, see, you don't have an answer for it, you know? Not to beat him over the head with it, but more so to be like, okay, not to just, you know, change the subject, but I sort of kind of changed the subject because he came up, he saw that he didn't have an answer, so it was no need for me to beat him over the head. He was just honest and was like, I don't have an answer for it. He didn't try to muster up something that was false just to have a comeback. And so I just kind of left it alone. And I think sometimes we have to be comfortable with leaving people with questions for them to wrestle with when they walk away from us.